It all begins with a decision that millions of families make every single day: trusting someone else to take care of their child. A babysitter who is supposed to protect them, look after them, and keep them safe whenever their parents cannot be there. For one family in Florida, that person was Marissa Mowry. She was 22 years old, and over time she became much more than just a babysitter. She lived with the family. She knew their routines. She shared their everyday life. And the boy's mother trusted her so deeply that she eventually began to think of Marissa almost as another daughter. But while that trust was growing, something was happening inside their home that the family would not discover until years later. The boy Marissa had been trusted to care for was only 11 years old. And according to what investigators later established, Marissa began sexually abusing him. Years later, when he was a teenager, the boy explained how everything had started gradually. He didn't only describe the abuse, he also described how Marissa had slowly crossed his personal boundaries. According to him, one of the methods she used involved an apparently innocent game called "Are You Nervous?" But over time, that game allegedly became increasingly inappropriate. Marissa would also tell him that she loved him, and most importantly, she told him not to tell anyone what was happening. At just 11 years old, the boy found himself trapped in a situation he simply did not have the emotional maturity to fully understand. But what happened next made the story even more disturbing. Marissa became pregnant. When her pregnancy became obvious, she told the family that another man was the father. And they believed her. Nobody imagined what the truth actually was, because the real father of that baby, as would later be confirmed, was the same young boy Marissa had been trusted to protect. He had been only 11 when the abuse began, and suddenly he was facing something overwhelming even for an adult. He was going to become a father. Marissa eventually gave birth, and for years, the truth remained hidden. The boy knew what had happened, but continued living with that secret. Meanwhile, the child was growing up, and the family still had no idea who his biological father really was. Until years later, the boy finally found the courage to speak. He told his mother everything. He told her what had happened with Marissa. He told her about the abuse. And then he revealed something that must have seemed almost impossible for her to believe. Marissa's child was actually his son. The family needed a definitive answer, so they arranged a DNA test. And when the results came back, there was no longer any doubt. The test confirmed the paternity. The teenager had been telling the truth. His mother later described her immediate physical reaction when she saw the result. She went and threw up. Because at that moment, she wasn't only discovering what had happened to her son, she was also realizing that it had happened inside a family that had welcomed Marissa into their lives and trusted her completely. A woman she had considered almost like a daughter had betrayed that trust in one of the most devastating ways imaginable. The authorities were then contacted. An investigation began. Detectives started reconstructing what had happened, and Marissa Mowry eventually found herself facing the justice system. The case inevitably attracted widespread attention. Not only because of the ages of the woman and the boy when the abuse began, but also because of the pregnancy and the DNA test that provided evidence impossible to ignore. Investigators also examined Marissa's past to determine whether other young people might have been involved. But when it came to the central case, the evidence was clear. Marissa accepted responsibility and pleaded guilty to charges related to the sexual abuse. Eventually, the sentence came. Marissa Mowry was sentenced to 20 years in prison. She was also classified as a sexual predator, with additional restrictions and years of probation to follow after her release. But while the justice system had determined her punishment, the consequences for the boy could not simply end with a courtroom sentence. Because by then, he was also a father. When Marissa was sentenced, he was 17 years old. His son was 5. At an age when most teenagers are thinking about school, friends, sports, and what they're going to do over the weekend, he was balancing his education with the responsibilities of raising a child. And yet, he made an important decision. He chose to be there for his son. With the help of his family, he tried to give the little boy as normal a childhood as possible. His mother explained that the teenager would take his son to school before going to school himself. 2 generations, because of circumstances neither of them had chosen, were practically growing up together. The young father never pretended that any of this was easy. Becoming a parent under those circumstances meant losing a significant part of his own childhood and adolescence. But in interviews, he also showed remarkable maturity. He understood that his son was not responsible for what had happened to him. That little boy had no control over the circumstances in which he was conceived. And so the young father tried to separate the trauma he had experienced from the love and responsibility he felt toward his child. He wanted to take something that had begun with an incredibly painful experience and turn it into something positive for his son. And that may be the most important part of this entire story. Because behind the headlines, the courtroom footage, and a case that almost seems impossible to comprehend, there was first and foremost an 11-year-old child whose trust was violated by an adult who was supposed to protect him. The responsibility belonged to her, not to the 11-year-old boy. And when that boy, now a teenager, finally found the strength to tell his family what had happened, the truth could finally begin to emerge. A DNA test confirmed his story. The investigation brought the case before the justice system, and Marissa Mowry was sentenced to prison. But no sentence can completely erase what happened. It can establish responsibility, it can provide accountability, and it can remind us of something fundamental. When an adult is trusted with the care of a child, that trust carries an enormous responsibility. In this case, that trust was betrayed. And what remained was a boy who had been forced to grow up far earlier than he ever should have. A boy who, despite everything he had experienced, decided that his son's life would not be defined only by the traumatic circumstances in which it began. He could not change his own past, but he could still try to build a different future for his child.